The Valentini safe room, 2 floors under the rose garden, was 30 by 20 feet with reinforced steel walls and air filtration. And at 12:14 a.m., on what should have been her engagement night, Sienna Russo sat on a velvet bench in a navy silk dress with $60,000 of heirloom jewelry and a Glock 19 inches her hand. Because Vivian had wordlessly pressed it into her palm at the safe room door and said, "Only if." Aria sat next to her with her phone, scrolling. Nico paced. Lorenzo and Anna Russo sat across the room playing a slow game of Scopa with a deck Mrs. Carmela kept down here precisely for this purpose. Dante was upstairs, on the war floor, with Tomas and the lieutenants. The screens on the safe room wall showed 26 exterior cameras. The driveway, the gates, the riverside, the dock, the wine cellar service entrance, the roof. Aria looked up from her phone.
Sienna,
Yes.
I just got a text. From an unknown number.
Don't open it.
I already opened it. It's a video. Sienna, it's a live video.
She handed the phone over. Sienna took it. The video showed the side gate of the estate from the outside. Somebody had hacked the camera and was streaming a feed back to themselves. A black sedan idling on the street. 2 men in suits. Marco Greco in the back seat, in a navy windbreaker, looking right at the lens. He smiled. He held up a sign. Hand lettered, black Sharpie. 2 words, last meal. Anna Russo crossed herself across the room. Sienna's hand went very still on the Glock.
What does it mean?
It means he's not coming to kill Dante. He's coming to kill me. Because he knows that would kill Dante more.
She stood up. She handed the Glock to Aria. She walked to the safe room door. Lorenzo looked up from his cards.
Chara,
I have to go up there.
you will not.
Lorenzo, listen to me. Marco Greco has been planning this since Sunday. He knew about the engagement. He waited. He is here for one of 2 reasons: to kill me, or to draw Dante out into the open. Either way, every second I sit down here is a second Dante is making a worse decision.
Lorenzo set down his cards. He looked at her for a long time. He nodded once.
Mrs. Carmela, open the door.
The Valentini estate's 3rd floor war room at 12:31 a.m. was lit by 32 monitors and 7 men in suits. And when Sienna Russo walked in, still in her navy silk dress and bare feet because she had taken off her heels on the stairs, every head turned at once. And Dante Valentini, leaning over the conference table with both palms flat on a map of the estate, lifted his head and said one word.
No,
Yes.
Sienna, go back downstairs.
He came for me, Dante. I'm not hiding.
He came for me. Through you. Go back downstairs.
She crossed the room. She stopped on the other side of the conference table.
Listen to me. He is sitting in a sedan on East 58th Street with a sign that says, "Last Meal." He is bait, Dante. He is bait. He wants you to come out. He has snipers somewhere. He has men inside the catering staff or the security staff or the valets. He is not the threat. He is the signal.
Tomas, at the far end of the table, lifted his head.
Boss, she's right.
Dante did not move. Sienna leaned forward across the map.
Who is the inside man, Tomas?
I don't know.
Yes, you do.
Tomas's eyes flicked once.
Sienna,
You have known for 4 years. You let it ride because they have your sister in Caracas and they have been holding her over your head since Elena was killed. You worked it from the inside. You leaked them just enough to keep them happy, and you fed Dante just enough to build the case. You are not the traitor. You are the plant. But tonight Marco Greco is here because you have been bleeding information for 4 years, and tonight he thinks you will let him in.
Tomas's face was bloodless. Dante straightened up slowly.
Thomas.
Tomas's voice was a rasp.
boss. Her sister is 12 years old. She is in a basement in Patar. I have a dossier. I was going to tell you next week.
Why didn't you tell me 4 years ago?
Because I am not as brave as you, Fratello.
The room was perfectly silent. Dante looked at his oldest friend, then at Sienna, then at the live feed of Marco Greco on the street outside his house. He breathed out.
Thomas,
Yes, boss.
make the call to Caracas. Right now. Get your sister out tonight. I am sending a team. They will be in the air in 40 minutes. Then come back here. We will end this together.
Tomas's eyes filled. He turned away to make the call. Dante looked at Sienna.
How did you know?
Because his hands shook when Arya handed me the phone. And because I am cooking for him 3 times a week, and I know the difference between a man who is hungry and a man who is guilty.
The black sedan had been idling at East 58th for 38 minutes. In the back seat, Marco Greco smoked his 3rd unfiltered cigarette, waiting for a war. Instead, the heavy steel gates of the Valentini estate opened in absolute silence. Dante Valentini walked out alone, wearing a tuxedo, with his hands empty.
Walked out alone, Capo. We end this here, you and me, 40 paces. Whoever walks back to his car is the Don.
No, there is no duel. There is no honor in this anymore, Marco. You wanted a death so the news cameras could film your final chapter. But I am getting married in 9 weeks. To a woman whose father you killed 30 years ago. She asked me to be the kind of man her father was. So, Marco, I am honoring Antonio Russo by handing you right back to the FBI.
Dante whistled one sharp note. 8 black SUVs converged from 4 directions. Lights off, engines silent. Federal agents in tactical gear sealed the street in 11 seconds. The war was over. The estate's solarium at 4 in the morning was warm and golden. Sienna Russo sat in an elegant navy silk dress, holding a sleeping French bulldog named Sugo. Across from her, Dante sat with his bow tie loose and a single carafe of red wine between them.
Tomas's sister is on a plane. They are heading to a safe house. He is still my friend, Sienna. But I need to know, how did you figure out his betrayal?
Because my grandmother told me the only way to know when killers are coming is to learn to smell it. It smells like a man who stopped sleeping. Tomas stopped eating eggs. He drank 5 coffees a day. I didn't know it was about his sister, but I knew he lived in terror.
Sienna, you are the most terrifying person I have ever met. My mother told me once, the man who marries you will be the man who is afraid of you, and profoundly grateful for it.
Are you afraid of me?
Every single day, and I am grateful for it. Every single day.
9 weeks later, the parish church of Santa Lucia in Brooklyn was packed. In the front pews, Vivian Valentini sat with her hand quietly folded inside Anna Russo's hand. Sienna walked down the aisle in a champagne silk gown altered by her grandmother. Hidden deeply in her pocket was a single dried fennel seed from the Valentini family farm in Corleone. Marco Russo openly wept as he placed his sister's hand into Dante's hand. In the second row, Arya Valentini was enthusiastically live-streaming the glorious moment to over 2 million viewers. At the altar, Dante stood in a sharp charcoal suit. As the weeping priest began the ceremony, 2 radically different histories silently merged into one. On the bride's side, Nana Anna lifted a glass of simple lemon water, toasting the ghosts of her murdered son and husband. On the groom's side, Don Lorenzo mirrored the exact gesture, toasting to his mother's copper bowl. It was the ultimate systemic victory, a legacy forged not by brutal violence, but by profound love, unmatched intelligence, and the undeniable power of food. The vows were Sienna's idea. She wrote them at 3 a.m., refusing to stand before 200 people and say words a stranger had written. At the altar, Sienna lifted her face to the Don of New York, declaring she was going to feed him for the rest of his life. She promised to feed their family, their friends, and even their enemies when they asked for terms. Because she finally learned the only weapon stronger than a knife is a plate. Tears welled in her eyes as she vowed to feed him every time he came home with someone else's blood on his cuff, until the day one of them died. And whoever went second would be allowed to set one empty place at the table, out loud. The church went perfectly silent. Dante's slate-gray eyes were wet. He swore he would eat whatever she made, and if she went first, he would not set one empty plate. He would set the whole table, every single night, so she'd know he was still feeding their family. Dante firmly kissed his wife, breaking the violent legacy forever. The Brooklyn Yacht Club reception had 11 stunning courses and a completely unified head table. Sienna politely but immovably refused to separate the guests into a bride's side and a groom's side. Nana Anna sat comfortably between Vivian and Lorenzo Valentini, warmly refilling their water glasses with her own hands as they laughed. During dinner, Arya stood up to deliver her final toast. She proudly announced her brother was the most controlled person she had ever known, a man who never lost his composure, except once. Aria's voice broke as she pointed directly at Sienna. She told the crowd about catching him at 6 in the morning in a Boston hospital, watching this incredible woman feed him a chicken cutlet. For the first time in 11 years, his composed face shattered. He finally loved out loud. The room joyfully raised their glasses to the new bride, but incredibly, even on her wedding day, Sienna couldn't stop being a chef. Sneaking into the busy kitchen in her white wedding dress, she expertly salted the sizzling risotto before walking back out to her new family. The honeymoon was a golden escape to Sicily. Dante happily drove a small rental Fiat into the sunlit hills above Palermo, taking Sienna to the exact same ancient farm his grandfather quietly bought back years ago. Sienna rolled down her window, letting the warm wind run through her fingers. She pointed out they had been driving for 3 hours, and he had not said a single word. Dante kept his piercing eyes on the winding road, flashing an incredibly soft smile. He confessed he was just happy for the first time in a decade, and completely forgot how to speak. Sienna gently laid her hand on his thigh, and they drove the rest of the way in peaceful silence. When they arrived at the tiny farmhouse overlooking the beautiful Corleone Valley, the 80-year-old housekeeper, Pina, was waiting at the historic gate. Pina took one look at Sienna, crossed herself in awe, and tearfully whispered that she had her mother's hands. As Sienna stepped into the rustic kitchen, Dante finally understood his grandfather's ultimate truth. Home is never just a place you live, it is a kitchen you eat in.
6 months later, the second location of Russo opened at the corner of Hudson and Charles in the West Village at 6 p.m. on a Friday in May, and Eater had run a write-up that morning that had broken the website's server. Russo 2, Sienna Valentini's long-awaited second restaurant, is already booked 3 months out. The first review in the Times came in 2 days later, 2 stars short of 3. Mrs. Valentini's second restaurant is, if anything, more ambitious than her first. The osso buco is being served by a woman who clearly believes she is reincarnating her grandmother, and after one bite, you will believe it too. The opening night dinner was a private event, family only, plus Tomas, plus Joanna, plus Mrs. Carmela, plus Pina from Sicily, who had flown in 2 days earlier because Sienna had asked her to come, and had refused the family plane and flown coach because, Pina said, "I want to see if Americans really sleep on planes." The long table was set in the private dining room. Lorenzo at the head, Anna Russo across from him, Vivienne on Lorenzo's right, Marco Russo's grandfather's chair on Anna's right, Aria, Nico, Marco, Joanna, Tomas. His sister Camilla, 14 years old, in a yellow dress, Mrs. Carmela, Pina, Dante at the foot. The seat beside Dante was empty because Sienna was, of course, in the kitchen. She came out for the second course. She came out for the 5th. She came out for the 9th. Each time she sat down beside Dante for exactly long enough to taste the wine. Each time the family touched her, Aria's hand on her shoulder, Nico's grin, Anna's small reaching gesture across the table. And each time she stood up again and went back to the line. After dessert, Lorenzo stood up. He cleared his throat. He lifted his water glass. "My wife," he says, "has been telling me for 42 years that the way you measure a man is by how many people will eat at his table on a Sunday. By that measure, I have always been very rich. I am tonight, looking around this table, richer than I have ever been in my life. Not because of any business, not because of any name, because of the woman in the kitchen who is, right now, yelling at her sous chef about the pappardelle." Laughter. To Sienna Valentini, the chef of our family, the wife of my son, the mother, one day, God willing, Vivian smacked her husband's arm, of my grandchildren, salute. The table rose. Salute! In the open kitchen, Sienna heard them. She did not stop plating. She wiped her cheek on the back of her wrist. She turned to her sous chef. "Order up. Pappardelle, table 14, now."
A year and 2 months after the wedding, the Valentini estate solarium at 7:14 a.m. on a Tuesday in January caught the rising sun across the floor in long bars. And Sienna Valentini sat in her bathrobe with her hands wrapped around a mug of ginger tea while her husband stood at the window with his back to her and his shoulders very still.
Dent,
Yes.
sit down.
He sat down. She slid an envelope across the wicker table. He picked it up. He opened it. He read the single sheet of paper inside it. He read it twice. He set the paper down. He took her hands in his hands. He looked at her face for a very long time. His eyes did the thing they did 3 times a year, that very brief and almost imperceptible breaking.
Sienna,
Yes,
you are...
I am.
How long?
6 weeks.
Are you...
I am fine. The doctor says everything is perfect.
Is it...
Too early to know. The next appointment will tell us.
Sienna,
Yes, Dante.
my mother is going to lose her mind.
I know.
My father is going to cry.
I know.
Your grandmother.
Already knows. I told her last night. She made me drink fennel tea, and she made me eat 3 pieces of bread with butter and salt, and she crossed herself 12 times, and she said finally.
He laughed. He laughed for a long time. His forehead came down to rest against her knuckles.
Sienna,
Yes.
I do not know how. I do not know how to be a father.
Neither do I. We will figure it out.
My father will help.
My grandmother will help.
My mother will help so much we will have to throw her out.
I know.
He looked up. His face was wet. He did not bother to hide it.
Sienna, I am. Thank you.
For what?
For all of it. For the sandwich in the back of the car. For the spaghetti at the dining table at midnight. For moving my father's chair by 3 feet. For the vows. For the ring. For this.
She leaned forward. She kissed him on the forehead.
You are welcome, Dante. Now go upstairs and tell your mother before I do, because I have 10 minutes before I have to be at the kitchen.
He went upstairs. Vivian's scream of joy could be heard from the 3rd floor landing. 5 years later, the long table at the Valentini estate on a Sunday afternoon in October was set for 16. And Sienna Valentini stood at the head of her own dining room in jeans and a soft cashmere sweater, and her grandmother's gold cross at her throat. And around the table, the people she loved sat eating the meal she had been cooking since 5 a.m. To her left, Dante, older around the eyes, the signet ring still on his right hand, quieter than he had been at 31, a small scar at his temple from an incident she had refused to ask him about, holding their 3-year-old daughter Elena Russo Valentini on his lap because Elena had eaten her chicken and now wanted her father's bread. To Sienna's right, their 5-year-old son Antonio Lorenzo Valentini, named for both his grandfathers, was eating with a fork held the wrong way and refusing every adjustment Mrs. Carmela offered. Across from her, Nonna Anna Russo at 81, smaller now, sharper than ever, holding a fork in one hand and Lorenzo Valentini's hand in the other across the table. Because the two of them, patriarch of New York and matriarch of Queens, had become, in the past 4 years, completely inseparable on Sundays, beside Anna, Vivienne, in her 70s now, hosting nothing because Sienna hosted everything, eating, drinking, watching her grandchildren with a smile so soft, Lorenzo had told her, just last week, that he had not seen it since their own children were small. Beside Vivienne Aria, 28, between tours, a Grammy on her mantle, single by choice, eating risotto and laughing at something Nico had said. Nico, 25, sober, 9 months. Sitting next to a girl named Hannah he had brought home for the first time, and who was so nervous her hand was shaking on her fork. And Sienna had taken 5 minutes that morning to coach her through the rules of a Valentini family dinner. Eat everything, compliment Nana. Do not bring up business. Do not bring up religion. Do not bring up the Eagles. Hannah was doing well. Marco at the other end of the table. Joanna beside him. Their 2-year-old daughter, Sophia, in a high chair making a beautiful mess of pasta. Tomas. Camila, 18 now, at NYU, eating slowly because she had figured out, at 16, that this was her favorite room in the world and she wanted it to last. Mrs. Carmela, Pina from Sicily, who came every October now for the harvest. Sienna lifted her glass. The whole table looked up. Too out loud, she says. Every glass lifted, out loud. Across the table, Dante caught her eye. He smiled. The smile he kept just for her. The one only she had ever been allowed to see. She smiled back. In her past life, she had been a princess in a kitchen. In this one, she was the queen of one, and the Don of New York belonged to her.